Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Imagine walking into a room expecting a normal day and instead discovering a secret so dark it changes everything. That's exactly what happened in Weatherfield. In one of the most shocking moments on Coronation Street, George Shuttleworth unexpectedly discovers Theo violently attacking Todd Grimshaw. What begins as a quiet suspicion suddenly explodes into a terrifying confrontation that exposes a long hidden pattern of manipulation and abuse. For weeks in Weatherfield, something about Todd Grimshaw just didn't feel right. If you have watched him over the years, you know Todd is usually confident, quick-witted, and never short of a sarcastic comment. But lately, that version of Todd seemed to disappear. Instead, people noticed a completely different side of him, quiet, nervous, and constantly on edge. Friends started picking up on the small changes, conversations that Todd normally would have late suddenly became awkward silences. He avoided eye contact, gave short answers, and seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. The biggest red flag. Every time someone mentioned Theo, Todd would instantly brush it off, change the topic, or insist that everything was perfectly fine. But those forced smiles didn't fool everyone. Something clearly wasn't right. What no one realized at the time was that behind closed doors, Todd had been living in a nightmare. Theo had carefully built an image that made him look calm, charming, and completely harmless. To most people around Weatherfield, he seemed confident and respectable. The kind of guy nobody would suspect of doing anything cruel. But beneath that smooth exterior was a very different reality. Theo had slowly taken control of Todd's life. He manipulated him emotionally, isolated him from people who cared about him, and created an environment where Todd constantly felt like he had to walk on eggshells. Theo's temper became more unpredictable with time. Arguments would explode out of nowhere, leaving Todd scared and desperate to calm things down before things got worse. Fear became Todd's daily reality, and the more afraid he felt, the harder it became for him to tell anyone what was really happening. Then came the moment that changed everything. One ordinary day, George Shuttleworth was simply going about his routine when something caught his attention. George has always been the kind of person who notices when something feels off. Maybe it was raised voices drifting through the building, or maybe it was the sudden sound of something crashing that made him stop in his tracks. Whatever it was, it didn't sit right with him. Concerned, George followed the noise. What he found next was something he would never forget. The moment George opened the door, he walked straight into a scene of chaos. Theo's anger had completely exploded, and Todd was in the middle of a terrifying struggle. Theo was physically attacking him, his rage fully unleashed. Todd was trying desperately to protect himself, pleading with Theo to stop while trying to block the blows coming this way. For a split second, George just stood there frozen. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The man he thought he knew was now standing in front of him as someone capable of terrifying violence. But George didn't stay frozen for long. He shouted for Theo to stop, rushed forward immediately, pulling him away from Todd. The sudden interruption caught Theo completely off guard. The tension in the room instantly exploded as George demanded to know exactly what was happening. Theo quickly tried to regain control of the situation. He insisted it was just a heated argument that had gotten out of hand. But George wasn't buying it. Todd's appearance told the real story. His shaken expression, the fear in his eyes, and the physical signs of the attack made it painfully clear that this wasn't just some ordinary disagreement. George realized he had just uncovered something far more serious, and in that moment, Theo's carefully crafted image started to crumble. The confrontation quickly became a turning point not only for Todd but for the entire community of Weatherfield. George refused to accept Theo's excuses and instead focused entirely on helping Todd, who was clearly traumatized by everything that had happened. Emotionally, it was an incredibly intense moment. Todd struggled to even speak at first. For so long, he had been living in fear, convinced that no one would believe him or that speaking out would somehow make things worse. But now the truth was out in the open. George's presence in that moment became a lifeline. Instead of judgment or doubt, Todd received something he desperately needed: support. Meanwhile, Theo could feel his control slipping away. His attempts to explain the situation or twist the story only made things worse. George stood firm and made it absolutely clear that he wasn't going to let Theo hurt Todd ever again. Once news of the incident spread across Weatherfield, the entire community was stunned. Many residents struggled to process what had happened. The version of Theo they thought they knew didn't match the violent reality George had witnessed. Shock quickly turned into anger. People realized that Todd had been suffering silently for far too long. Friends and neighbors rallied around him, offering comfort and support as he began the difficult process of recovering from the trauma he had endured. The emotional aftermath became a major part of the story. Todd now had to face the painful memories of what he had gone through while also trying to rebuild his confidence and sense of safety. It wasn't easy, but he wasn't alone anymore. George stood by him every step of the way. For George, the discovery had become deeply personal. He kept thinking about how easily the truth could have stayed hidden and how much worse things could have become if he hadn't walked in at that exact moment. That thought pushed him to stand even stronger beside Todd. Eventually, authorities became involved, and Theo's actions came under serious investigation. What had once been hidden behind closed doors was now impossible to deny. Evidence, witness statements, and Todd's own courage in speaking out slowly revealed the full extent of what had been happening. The tension across Witherfield only grew as the truth unfolded. Some people felt guilty for not noticing the warning signs earlier. Others directed their anger toward Theo for the harm he had caused. But one thing became clear throughout the entire situation. Todd's bravery in finally telling the truth became a powerful moment for everyone watching. His journey from fear to honesty showed just how much courage it takes to confront abuse and take back control of your life. By the time everything reached its climax, George's discovery had completely changed the lives of everyone involved. Theo's dark secret was no longer hidden, and the consequences of his actions were finally catching up with him. For Todd, the path to healing would take time, but thanks to the support of people like George, there was finally hope. The moment George opened the door didn't just stop a violent attack, it exposed the truth that needed to be confronted. And in true Coronation Street fashion, the story delivered suspense, emotional depth, and uncomfortable drama that left viewers completely shaken. Because in Weatherfield, even the quietest streets can hide the darkest secrets. George stepping in at the critical moment didn't just stop the violence, it exposed a pattern of abuse that forced the entire community to confront a painful truth. Honestly, this storyline is incredibly powerful because it shows how abuse can hide behind normal appearances, and how one brave moment of intervention can change everything. So what do you think? If George hadn't walked in at that exact moment, would Todd have ever been able to escape the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more dramatic TV story breakdowns like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.